and I wanted to talk a little bit about the boat show. As I said in a previous video, we're new to this area, the Sandusky Huron area in Ohio, which is right on Lake Erie. And in 2022, we moved here, and my grandkids found out that we had sold our camp and everything in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. But when they saw how close we were to the water, they're like, "Oh, you're getting a boat." And I'm like, yeah. Never owned a boat, don't know anything about a boat. Always had friends with a boat, but never had one on our own. And so we started looking around and saw the prices of boats, and even though we could technically afford it, my wife and I decided to not spend a whole lot of money on a boat. What we ended up with was a 1988 Sea Ray that was definitely a fixer-upper. And the question was, well, we need something to tow it. Because at the time we had a RAV4 Prime hybrid, which, you know, it's hybrid electric. There's no way that's towing a boat. Well, I want to back up just a second, because what it ended up happening was, once we decided to get a boat, I sold the RAV4 to Carvana, made a little bit of money on that, went to the local dealer, looked around for trucks that would tow a boat. Now at the time, I wanted to get one of those Lund bass boats, all decked out with all of the finders and the trolling motors and everything like that. And so that's what I bought this Toyota Tacoma for. And then we went and looked at the boats, and we ended up with that 88 Sea Ray, and the Tacoma, there's no way that's going to tow that boat. So in less than 30 days, I again sold that Tacoma to Carvana. Strangely made a little bit of money on it. And then went back to the dealer, and the young lady there sold me a Ram 1500, which is more than enough to tow the boat, the 88 Sea Ray. So anyway, that was a pretty interesting month looking for boats, trying to get these vehicles situated. Ended up with a boat, and oddly, we just put it right into storage. So we didn't buy it until I think the first week in November. And here, after the mid-October, unless you've got an outboard motor and you're trying to have a place to store it, you really don't have an option of keeping it in the water. So we put it straight into storage, and over that winter, the place that I had stored it at, they let me come in and do a bunch of work. Now, what I wanted to talk about was what I worked on during the winter, and this boat literally needed rewired, a bunch of trim work, some new wood, needed new upholstery. The engine, I had some people inspect it. It's a 350 small block, was perfectly fine. In fact, a lot of it had been maintained very well, and it was well kept. Now, working on it over the winter, I put in a new switch panel. We got new upholstery from CJ Upholstery here in town. I'll put a link in the description. And by the time spring came around, this boat was ready to go. Well, one thing you can't test when it's in storage in the wintertime is the shifter, right? The forward, the backwards, neutral. And when we took this boat out for its maiden voyage from the Venetian in Sandusky, we needed to get gas. We didn't know how much was in it, but we figured we're going to put some gas in it. Well, mid-April, not much is open yet for gas, but the Sandusky gas station was open. So we packed up the wife and the 2 grandkids and loaded some gear up and went out. Needless to say, we made it to the dock, but it was more about throwing the ropes and having people catch us coming in. And I started to notice a little bit about the throttle, and it was catching, it was hard to shift. And I'll fast forward a little bit here, because over the summer it just was difficult. I couldn't get it into gear, I couldn't get it out of gear. I would, take tight turns and it would stall out on me. So we were having all kinds of issues. Put it into storage, and then last year, 2024, we had everything, pretty much all the boxes checked. Everything was perfect. We brought it out. All the stuff was restored. I put a new shifter on it, had it tuned, and everything was working great. So by the end of 2023, everything was fine. Come bringing it out in 2024, tune-up went well, fired right up, didn't even have an issue once the batteries were in. And then the wife and I took it out between April and probably the end of, I'd say, not the end of, the mid-June time frame. Never an issue. It was perfectly fine. We were taking it out, went to Kelly's multiple times, went to Put-in-Bay, drove around the islands. But one afternoon we went to Middle Bass for the day, just to hang out. First time at Middle Bass. And the weather shifted on the way back, and there were 4 and 5 footers. Now, this 88 Sea Ray 250 Cuddy Cabin was 25 feet. And I've never really had any issues with the waves or anything like that. If it got too ridiculous, we just came in. Because being new boaters, we weren't really comfortable driving in that kind of weather. So we just came in if it looked anywhere near sketchy. Well, coming back, we had to get back. And that South Passage between Kelly's and Marblehead gets rocked like you wouldn't believe with just the boat traffic. The ferries go through there, the tankers go through there, everybody's boat goes through there pretty much. And then you throw on top of that the weather shifting, and we got rocked coming back, no doubt, coming back. It took us like an hour and a half. Now that's normally a 30-minute trip, took us an hour and a half. And we got in, everybody was safe, we didn't have any issues, we just took it slow and, made it safely back. Now, that was, I think, a Sunday when that happened, because when we went out the following Tuesday, so that's 2 days later, we come out of the Venetian and we don't even get to the channel there out of Sandusky Bay, and the wife was like, "What's that smell? What's that smoke?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "There's smoke coming out of the engine." I'm like, "What?" And so, sure enough, I slowed down, and all of a sudden this white smoke just started pouring out of the doghouse. That's the cover that goes over the engine on an inboard outboard. And I'm like, oh man. So it could be a bunch of things. It could be water, a little bit of oil on the outside, whatever. I open up that doghouse, and I'm not kidding. There is oil all over the bilge, just plastered over every nook and cranny in the bilge. Well, obviously I did an about face, turned around, and kept it extremely low RPMs coming back. And just from the channel to the Venetian, it took us an hour. I mean, I wasn't taking any chances of this thing stalling out. It seemed to be doing okay, so I didn't really feel like I needed to shut it off and do it. The smoke had died down. It was only when I got up over like 2,500 RPMs that it started to really show itself. But we got back to the dock, and over the next several weeks, I had up to 5 different marine mechanics take a look. And it wasn't good. It was not good in any shape, form you could think about. Not good. Rings, pistons, compression tests, 4 out of the 8 failed. Stringers were cracked where the engine mounted onto them, so the engine mounts were cracked, 2 of them. The head gasket, just on and on and on and on. So then I started pricing out, well, you know, we did buy this on the cheap, so if we got to spend a little money, let's do it. And the problem was, the more I looked, well, it ranged from, yeah, we'll come out and fix it, but it's not going to be till next year. So the whole season was gone. The next thing that came up was, well, if you're really going to do that, it's a 35-year-old small block. Why don't you just replace it? All right, so what's that going to cost? Well, now you got to take the old engine out, put the new engine in, hook everything back up, and then get it all situated again, right? Needless to say, it became just, the cost was just ridiculous. So we ended up not doing that, and I put it online, you know, for sale, trying to get somebody to buy it and fix it up. Somebody who knows how to fix engines. This is probably not a big deal. That's not me. I know the engine components. I know what they look like. I understand what they do. But if you ask me to troubleshoot something or take an engine apart and put it back together, probably not. Like, that's not my thing. I can fix a lot of other stuff, and I'm very handy and DIY and all of that, but I am not an engine guy. Never have been. I don't think I ever will be. I can do the basic stuff, but this was way, way beyond my skill set by a mile, 10 miles. So no real takers in a month. The end result was we had to sell it, or technically sell it and put it at auction through Boat Angel. I'll put a link in the description if you find yourself in this situation sometime. The other option was you just take it to the dump. I mean, we live in a condo now. There's nowhere for me to put this thing. So Boat Angels came and got it, and that was the end of that. It was a hard decision because it was a boat we really loved. We really enjoyed it. We enjoyed fixing it up. We enjoyed making it our own. Everybody loved this boat. Even people walking by were like, wow, you really did a good job on this. We put all this extra trim on it, kept it really nice looking and everything. And in the end, we just had to sell it and move on. Then came the decision, do we get another one? For a while, we thought about this. So the grandkids ended up coming in the middle of June. And we went over and over this with them, and they're like, oh, you got to get another one, you got to get another one. But the wife and I were like, are we boat people now? I mean, we had it for roughly 18 months, and we enjoyed the hell out of it. But here we are living on Lake Erie, and we don't have a boat. But are we now boat people? So we struggled with this decision considerably, and in the end, we ended up getting a new boat, a newer boat. It was a couple years old. We didn't want the boat payment, but you know what? The decision that we're boat people kind of made that decision for us about getting another boat. But the nice thing was the grandkids were here and they went around to the different places. And this was in July, so midsummer. Went around looking at boats, and they helped us pick out the one that we eventually purchased. And that was a good thing because it ultimately, the old one died 2 days before they got here, so we didn't really get to go out on the boat. Where we ended up was a 22-foot Stingray center console. Now, if you're not familiar with the 88 Sea Ray Cuddy Cabin, it has a cabin in the front, and you have to go inside of it and up the hatch and go out on the top. You can walk around this real narrow rail on the outside, but riding around and fishing, you're not really up on the bow of the boat. You're all in the back. And that's just the way those boats are. You can go up there and sit and sunbathe and that sort of thing when you're anchored, but to get up there fishing, it's still kind of sketchy, especially if you got any waves or anything like that. And if you're trolling underway, forget it. You're not getting up on the bow of a cuddy cabin. So we went with this center console, and we knew from our measly 18 months experience kind of what we wanted for requirements. Things that were must-haves, things that were nice-to-haves, stuff like that. And so I went around to the different places and said, okay, here's our list. And we ended up with Buckeye Sports, linking below, in Huron, where we handed them the list and they zeroed in on a couple of boats. The grandkids and I took a look, and we eventually settled on this center console. Now, the funny thing is, the younger grandson, he actually put together a PowerPoint presentation with all the pictures, the costs, the breakdown, the monthly payments, everything. He researched this online, put it all into this couple slide PowerPoint presentation, and sat my wife down and did his sales pitch in getting this boat. So even though she agreed that we wanted to get a boat, the reluctancy was still there on both our parts, but mainly on her part. And so I said, well, buddy, you're going to have to convince Bubba that this is the boat. And so he did just that. And we ended up getting it while they were here. But the problem was, with all of the bottom painting and preparation that they still needed to do, it didn't launch until a couple weeks after they had left. So that leaves us, from like mid-July through the end of last year, the wife and I learning this new boat. And I gotta tell you, it has been unbelievable. We went out to the islands. We learned how to dock this thing, which is a dream compared to the 88 Sea Ray. Went out to different places. We even went over to Vermilion, which is a little bit of a hike. And we all went all the way over to Port Clinton, which is a hike in the other direction. We never would have tried that with our old boat, to be honest. And thinking back, hindsight is always 20/20, is the saying. We weren't able to get up to like 15, 20 miles an hour on the old boat, maybe. And that was at full throttle. So that engine was going for a while. Even though it was well maintained and well kept and there were new components, it just didn't have the juice to get up to speed and get us where we were going. And we were okay with that. But now that we got this newer boat, which is an outboard, and we can get up to like 40 miles an hour and cruise around all over the place, it is just a dream. And we put, I will say, between July and mid-October or late October, about 120 boat hours or engine hours on that thing. We were out there every night after we both got off of work. We'd go out in the evenings, have dinner, and it was just unbelievable. So the tale of the two boats is kind of what I'll probably name this video, just to let you know, what our boating situation has been and where we ended up. And this will lead into a couple of other parts and pieces of videos. I want to talk about what I learned last year in being able to fish. So yeah, we've had a boat for almost 2 years now, and the joke going around amongst my friends is I probably should have snagged a fish by now. Not happening. Haven't snagged a fish, just not happening. But something clicked. I found out that a boat captain lived about 4 doors down from me, and went out with him and paid him on a charter. And then he just suggested, hey, why don't I come out on your boat and help you figure out some of this fishing stuff, and I'll take a look at your gear and we'll go through the motions on some things and see if that can get you putting fish in the boat. And I gotta tell you, the learning curve fishing on Lake Erie is incredible. People say that it's easy, but it's not. The gear that you have to get, how you have to use that gear, the little things matter type stuff, I just wasn't getting it. I fished all my life and I still wasn't figuring it out. Now, could I trial and error and watch YouTube and figure it out? Yeah, sure, but I don't know about you, but I don't have that kind of time. I want to go out, fish. If I get skunked, I get skunked, but I don't want to be stuck, well, you used the wrong swivel and you had the wrong snap and you didn't have the right rod and reel, and like, I don't want to have to deal with any of that stuff. So he helped me figure all that out, and within that day and then the one other day he went out with me, we were catching fish hand over fist, putting stuff in the boat. So where that leaves me this year in 2025 is it's on, baby. Boards, divers, dipsy divers, you name it. We're going to go through those elements in subsequent videos, and I'm going to show you what I learned, because the videos that you watch on YouTube, they'll show you how to use these things, but there is so much that they're not saying that if you don't do it, you're going to get tangled, you're not going to catch fish, you're going to have all kinds of issues that I had, and I want to try to reduce that learning curve for people that are trying to figure this out, and I'll go into that in great detail here in subsequent videos. So the next thing I want to talk about is we're going to the 2025 Cleveland Boat Show. So now that you understand the journey that we've had a little bit about the boats, going to the boat show is interesting. Because on one hand, it's like going to an RV show. They want to sell you a boat. They want to sell you, the engines and all the features, and you can walk around and see what you like and what you don't like. But at the end of the day, they want to sell you a boat. Well, for me, even with the 88 Sea Ray that we had to get rid of, I went to the boat show to look for customization options. And there were a few vendors that did that, like for electronics mainly, but there really wasn't a whole lot of that there. And so I still went. It's something to do on a day. It's usually Thursday to Sunday, so we go. A friend of mine, we used to go on Fridays. It's something to do, walk around for a couple hours, see some different things, hang out. But even then, the first 2 years or so that we had the old boat, there really wasn't much on customization, and last year was even worse. There was even less vendors there on customization. But what there was, people selling different stick baits, different spoons, different fishing gear. Well, like I said before, I wasn't even snagging fish at that point. So the boat show's held in January. Well, by the time I figured this shit out in September, I didn't know anything about this stuff that was at the boat show. And there's other things like, the rod tubes and the different spoons, like the reflective, UV, things that make a difference at times to catch different fish. I had no clue about that stuff. So the other thing that the boat captain said is make sure you put yourself on a budget during the winter months, because you can dig a pretty big hole if you're not careful. So when we go to the boat show this year, it's not about necessarily customization in the new boat. It has 99% of what we want. So there's really nothing for me to do there. What I am going to be looking at is the different fishing gear, the different spoons. You can get reflective stickers and all kinds of different stuff. And so for me, this year, 2025, the Cleveland Boat Show is going to be more about that than it is about customizations and tweaking things on the new boat. All right, here we are walking into the boat show, and it doesn't look too crowded on a Friday. Not too bad. Oh yeah, got to get my bag.
Of course.
Thank you. All right, let's go get our ticket. All right, so we're here at the boat show. Everything's going. Got my ticket. Now I got to go find Brian. Oh, there he is. Let's see if we can zoom in and see him. He's got his bag too. All right, let's go wake him up. Go get this thing going. I caught you napping.
Yeah.
Even on your phone, the pedal will take up a lot of space.
Oh, I know. That's why something like that. Yeah, you just tie it down. All right, just wrapped up going to the boat show. There wasn't a whole lot there. I mean, unless you're in the market to buy a boat, there's just not a lot there. There was 2 or 3 places this year that had fishing gear. One guy had custom stuff that I bought a few of his. They were like $4 a piece, so that's a really good price for spoons. Other than that, there was the Huron Bait and Tackle. I stopped by. I know the guys there. I'll put a link down below. No Church of Perch that I saw. Maybe I walked by them, but I didn't see them. Didn't see any other real tackle place there. Saw JOB Fishing. I'll put a link again. He's out of Port Clinton area, does charters. I learned a lot from him on how to fish Lake Erie and just general boating. So if you're looking for a good resource to learn some of that, he also does charters and learning sessions if you want to do that. It's not a sponsor or anything. I'm just doing a shout out because he's helped me out quite a bit in my learning process. Another one is Vitamin C Fishing. He wasn't at the boat show, but he has been a huge help in me learning how to fish on Lake Erie and maneuver the boats and being able to become somewhat functional on the lake. I took some video. I'll see how it comes together. It might be shorter than one might think. I didn't want to come here and do video and walk around and shoot everything that I see. But because there really wasn't much, I didn't find myself bringing the phone out of the pocket to shoot enough video for anything of length. Even the squirrel, the water sea and squirrel, they only had one show today. That's it. And it was a couple hours later than we planned to be here, so I wasn't able to film that either. But if you have kids, watching the squirrel water ski, that's pretty fun time. They didn't have any Earl's kayak fishing was not here that I saw. Maybe I walked by him, but I usually take a picture with him. I learned a lot about fishing on the lake with him as well. I didn't see him here today. Maybe we'll see what happens next year.